It's time for the news.
Algeria is celebrating today the National Day of the National People's Army, initiated by the President of the Republic, Supreme Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. The Sahrawi Prime Minister Bushra Hammoudi Bayoun has reiterated the Sahrawis' full readiness to engage in direct, credible and unconditional negotiations with Morocco under UN auspices. And as the Palestinian Foreign Ministry once again called on the UN Security Council to take up its responsibility and impose a ceasefire. Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. I'm Mariam Bershi. Joining me live today, my colleague Masoud Sharfi. Hi Masoud.
Hello Mariam.
Algeria is celebrating today the National Day of the National People's Army, initiated by the President of the Republic, Supreme Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, in consecration of the sacred bond between the people and their army and in recognition of the role of the military institution in the process of building and defending the unity and sovereignty of the country. The unique bond is a source of pride for all Algerians who participate massively in all the activities and events organized by the National People's Army, as demonstrated by the historic turnout at the military parade to mark the 70th anniversary of the outbreak of the glorious revolution of national liberation, supervised by the President of the Republic. President Tebboune recalled that the doctrine of the People's National Army is defensive and that its armament are intended exclusively for the defense of Algeria and the protection of its national sovereignty, in addition to contributing to the establishment of international peace and security in accordance with our country's international and regional commitments, in compliance with international law and within the framework of our constitutional principles and rules. The development and reinforcement of defensive capabilities and the building of a strong and feared army have enabled our armed forces to reach the threshold of modernity, development and operational efficiency, and are the result of the far-sight vision of the National People's Army High Command and the relentless efforts of all its personnel, efforts which cover various levels and areas including training, the acquisition of the latest equipment and weaponry, the mastery of advanced and complex technologies, and as well as continuous training and preparation for combat. It highlights the positive and qualitative results of the demonstrative and tactical exercises organized recently, which have helped to enhance the operational capabilities and combat skills of the various units and formations, thus demonstrating the level of competence and effectiveness achieved by our army, as also demonstrated by the remarkable results in the fight against terrorism and organized crime. More details on this day in a special program to be broadcast at the end of our edition. Algeria and 7 OPEC Plus countries have decided to increase their production by 547,000 barrels per day by September 2025. The ministerial meeting, held by a video conference, was attended by Algeria, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iraq, Kazakhstan, Kuwait, the Sultanate of Oman and Russia. Discussion focused on the current state of the international oil market, the short-term outlook and compliance with voluntary reduction commitments, including mechanisms for offsetting surplus volumes. Algeria's contribution to this adjustment will be an increase of 11,000 barrels per day from that month. The ministers also agreed to maintain close coordination through monthly meeting in order to ensure constant monitoring of market developments, compliance with commitments, and the implementation of compensation measures. Their next meeting will be held on September 7th, 2025. And on the second day of the 13th edition of the Summer University of Senior Official of the Sahrawi Polisario Front and government members of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, the Sahrawi Prime Minister, Bushra Hammoudi Bayoun, has reiterated the Sahrawis' full readiness to engage in direct, credible and unconditional negotiations with Morocco under UN auspices. Over to you, Masoud.
In his speech, he stressed that the conflict must be resolved through a democratic legal solution, respectful of the international legality and the legal status of Western Sahara and of the Sahrawis' right to self-determination, and rejecting Morocco's claim of sovereignty over the territory. The Sahrawi Prime Minister stated that the summer university was taking place amid major international changes, affecting in one way or another, the course of the Sahrawis' struggle. He affirmed the university symbolizes the strong Algerian-Sahrawi ties and pledged loyalty to Algeria's support until victory is achieved.
This university has always been a living witness of the solid fraternal alliance existing between our two peoples and our two states. It is also a renewed occasion to strengthen and develop this institution, which concretely embodies the brotherhood and Algeria's proud support for the Sahrawi people's struggle for freedom and independence. On this important occasion, we affirm to you and to Algeria, its people and government, that we shall always remain faithful to the pledge, preserving Algeria's noble gesture out of loyalty and in honor of the covenant of our two people's martyrs and revolutions, until victory is achieved.
For his part, the president of the National Committee of Solidarity with the Sahrawi people, Said Ayashi, emphasized that the victory for the Sahrawi cause requires perseverance and collective efforts, highlighting that international law supports their right to a self-determination referendum. Many participants to this event unanimously emphasized the importance of supporting the Sahrawi people to enable them to recover their freedom and independence. Back to you, Mariam.
And as the Palestinian Foreign Ministry once again called on the UN Security Council to take up its responsibility and impose a ceasefire in Gaza, 8 Palestinians were today killed by the Israeli forces while gathering to receive some food in the central part of the enclave. According to the news agency WEFA, 20 others were earlier wounded while queuing outside aid distribution centers north of Rafah in the southern part of the territory. Reacting to the continued Israeli attacks and the deplorable humanitarian situation in Gaza, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry expressed deep concerns at the UN Security Council's inaction regarding the restrictions imposed by the Israeli occupying authorities on aid. In this respect, it reiterated that the Council's role was decisive in safeguarding the lives of over 2 million people in the Gaza Strip who are confronted to a spiral of murders and famine and are deprived of medicine care and all basic human rights. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry underscored that the UN Council must adopt relevant resolutions and implement the recent decisions taken by the International Conference on the Palestinian Issue, highlighting the necessity to put the two-state solution into a concrete form. In Nigeria, an impressive pro-Palestinian demonstration was held in Lagos to denounce the ongoing Israeli massacres in the Gaza Strip and to demand an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in the Palestinian enclave. In response to a call from civil society organizations in Lagos, hundreds of demonstrators called for freedom for Gaza and for an end to the genocide. The demonstrators also denounced the growing famine in the Gaza Strip, with 175 people killed, including 98 children. The director of the Muslim Advocacy International, Abdul Wahid Atuyebi, described the situation in Gaza as genocide and a deliberate campaign to starve an entire population. He urged the international community, notably African nations, to intervene to put an end to this humanitarian tragedy. Still in Algeria, according to a report by experts monitoring violence in the country for the UN, armed men have kidnapped more than 50 people in northwest Nigeria. The armed men broke into a village of Sabon Gamri in Zamfara state, in a region that suffers from gang violence that kidnaps people for ransom. And in Sudan, at least 14 people have been killed in attacks carried by the Rapid Support paramilitary forces in the town of El Fasher in North Darfur State. According to the Sudanese human rights organization, emergency lawyers quoted by media, dozens of others were wounded in the attack, which occurred in the village of Kani, located on a road just outside El Fasher. In recent days, the El Fasher or the Rapid Support Paramilitary Forces, have launched a new offensive against the town of El Fasher, which they have been besieged since May 2024. The African Union Support and Stabilization Mission in Somalia has announced that its troops backed by the Somali government forces killed more than 50 members of the Shabab terrorist group during a violent clash in the town of Barit in southern Somalia. It refuted media reports that the mission claimed heavy casualties in Barir. In the town of Barir, which has rich agricultural resources, is located some 60 kilometers southwest of Mogadishu and is one of the strategic areas of the lower Shabelle region along the Shabelle River. And in Yemen, at least 68 migrants have died after a boat with about 157 people on board sank off the coast of Yemen in bad weather. The Yemen chief of the International Organization for Migration said that the vessel capsized off Yemen's southern province of Abiyan. The third UN conference on landlocked developing countries will be held from tomorrow and will last until the 8th of August in Awaza, Turkmenistan, with the aim of rethinking the global system to support these 32 nations, whose economies often remain marginalized due to lack of access to the sea. Over to you, Ms. Hood.
The event, which will bring together heads of states, ministers, investors and local officials, offers an opportunity to explore solutions and forge partnerships, address challenges and unlock their full potential for a more equitable and prosperous future in landlocked developing countries. Driven by the new Awaza Program of Action for 2034, adopted by the United Nations General Assembly last December, LLDC-3 will also advocate for smoother transit, more efficient trade corridors, strengthened economic resilience, and a new financing to improve development prospects for some 570 million people. The program focuses on 5 priorities: transformation, infrastructure, trade, integration and resilience, as landlocked developing countries face high trade costs, poor connectivity and limited access to global markets. The 4-day conference will address these issues during plenaries, high-level round tables and inclusive fora involving various stakeholders. Back to you, Miriam.
And as Algeria celebrates today the National Day of the People's National Army, I invite you to listen to this special program produced and compiled by Masoud Shafi on this day.